So hello, dear humans. Um, Welcome to our 223rd online gathering for faith leaders across the country, now called Creating Beloved Community. This regular gathering is sponsored by ELCA's coaching ministry. I am Jason O'Neill. I use any and all pronouns, and I'm honored to be one of your facilitators today.
And again, I'm Solveig Nilsson Gooden, and I use she, her pronouns. And I'm also your facilitator today, and so grateful to be so. We're doing this in attunement with the Truth and Healing movement of the ELCA and moving toward right relationship with our Indigenous siblings and neighbors. So part of our attunement is to begin with a land acknowledgement. And I invite you to really sink into the land where you are, the specific land and peoples that steward the place where you are. We are gathered together from all parts of Turtle Island, also referred to as North America. We are connected by the breath given us by the breath maker, and by this very piece of Mother Earth, the land that each of us inhabits today. We understand that all land is Indigenous land, and we invite each of you to name in the chat the Indigenous peoples or tribal nations whose lands you occupy now. We also acknowledge the terror of colonialism, genocide, ethnic cleansing, broken treaties, stolen land, forced removal, and boarding schools, as well as the thousands of missing and murdered Indigenous women and children each year, and the ripple effects of violence still being experienced today. We know that Indigenous peoples are not historical subjects, but are part of our communities. That's in contradiction to the chapter that we read today that looks at Indigenous peoples as historical objects, essentially, to be studied. But they offer invaluable wisdom for how we exist in relationship with Mother Earth, as well as our human and non-human neighbors.
Also important for us to offer a labor acknowledgement with permission granted by Dr. Tara T.J. Stewart. We acknowledge that much of what we know of this country today, including its culture, economic growth, and development, has been made possible by the labor of enslaved Africans and their ascendants who suffered the horror of transatlantic trafficking, slavery, and Jim Crow laws. We are indebted to their labor and their sacrifice, and we acknowledge the tremors of that violence throughout the generations and the resulting impact that can still be felt and witnessed today.
Another vital part of creating beloved community, as you all know, is fostering a sense of belonging. So we invite you to update your name in the Zoom to include your pronouns, if you haven't already done so. This is just one more way that we can express welcome for all of God's children. And at any point in these gatherings, you can access the captions option in the Zoom menu on your device. It might show up with the letter CC in a box. You just need to click on the three dots, or you may need to click on three little dots and swipe to a different screen within Zoom to access this option. So let's take a deep breath and continue our work toward healing and justice by entering into a place of peace and listening together. Through these regular gatherings, we've developed a covenant of how we enter and interact in this space. We're committed to creating a safer and braver space where each of us are able to bring the truth of who we are and how we're doing. If you share something today that you wish for us to edit out of the recording, just let us know afterwards. And with all of this said, we affirm these conversations are meant to be an intentional step to live more fully into God's dream for us as the body of Christ, the beloved community.
And as Bell Hooks wrote in All About Love, rarely, if ever, are any of us healed in isolation. Healing is an act of communion. So today and every second Wednesday of 2025, we'll journey with Indigenous author Vine Deloria Jr. and engage with Custer Died for Your Sins, an Indian manifesto. A reminder about our journey together. We're all learning from this Indigenous elder through his writing. So Solveig and I are not teaching. We're just facilitators of this space each month. So you are teachers with us. Um, yeah.
Yeah. And so as we have done, we're just going to begin with this similar quote that we've repeated every week. But the Indian task of keeping an informed public available to assist the tribes in their efforts to survive is never ending. And so the central message of this book, that Indians are alive, have certain dreams of their own, and are being overrun by the ignorance and the mistaken, misdirected efforts of those who would help them, can never be repeated too often. And so we keep repeating it. So we're just going to do a quick reminder of the aspects of our covenant, that we're bringing our whole bodies here. This is not just an intellectual conversation. We're speaking from our heads and our hearts. We're practicing awareness of space and time with one another. We're a smaller group today, so that might make that we could be a little more flexible with that. But even so, we all know ourselves. And so just invite you to really be aware of and practice stepping up when you really need to step up, and step back when you need to step back. And just so that each person feels empowered and emboldened to speak and take up space in this circle. And finally, we are always learning. That is the point. So take some risks in what you're sharing. And Jason and I are committed to doing that, the same thing.
Awesome.
So it's 11:10. So we are going to continue with the practice that we've developed, which is to take about 5 minutes of silence, and to give you that time to put in the chat any quotes from the chapter that really stood out for you. Please put the page number, and if there's some connecting piece of information from the websites you've been engaging with or whatever, feel free to include those, but just make the connection. And you're welcome to put as many quotes as you can put in the chat in 5 minutes. And then that will be the starting point for our conversation. Sound good? Thumbs up. Great. And just a reminder that we read the 4th chapter, Anthropologists and Other Friends.
Offer welcome to a couple other people who just joined us. We're just taking a few minutes to put in the chat what we read from chapter 4, things that stood out to you or shined for you, and then we'll engage those in a few minutes. If you could include the page numbers as well, that's helpful. I'm curious if someone else might feel led or called to read all these things from the chat for the recording, since Solveig and I seem like we talk quite a bit. I'm more than open to doing it again. I just thought I'd offer in case we want to hear a different voice. All right, I'll do that. So, into each life, it is said, some rain must fall. If I recall, that's from the first chapter, page 78. From page 80, you may be curious as to why the anthropologist never carries a writing instrument. He never makes a mark because he already knows what he is going to find. From page 78, Indians have anthropologists. From page 99, for if Sitting Bull was accidentally killed, then President Kennedy's death was merely the result of Oswald's carelessly cleaning his rifle. The two deaths had the same motivation, political assassination. From page 92, Indians must be redefined in terms that white men will accept, even if that means re-Indianizing them according to a white man's idea of what they were like in the past and should logically become in the future. Page 86, abstract theories create abstract action. Page 82, since 1955, there have been a number of workshops conducted in Indian country as a device for training young Indian leaders. Churches, Indian interest groups have each gone to workshop route as the most feasible means for introducing new ideas into younger Indians so as to create leaders, in quotes. From page 84, it is very unsettling for a teenage Indian to become an instant authority equal in status with a PhD interrogating him. Yeah, page 98, a democratic society is always uptight. Oops, my shifted about real rebellions because its very operating premise is that rebellions are nice. When rebellions turn out to be not so nice, panic prevails. Indeed. Page 93, there is an undefined expectation in American society that once a problem is defined, no matter how, and understood by a significant number of people who have some relations to the problem, there is no problem anymore. Where would we like to start?
Can start from the start if it's okay with you guys. So the first line that caught my attention are actually the first few words. Into each life, it is said, some rain must fall. And so as I read those words and thinking about Indian half anthropologist, I was thinking we are doing this much more in a Native American Indian culture, or Indians, right? But I think as I'm reading more and more of this, and as someone who came from the third world country, the white people, if you will, have done that across the world and not only America.
Mhm.
And so when I saw that in everyone's life, there must be some rain. Well, the rain did not only fall in North America.
Mhm.
I just thought I'd bring that awareness because sometimes people feel it's only the Indians and not the world, in my view. So
Mhm.
one of the line I hope in this world where even if you're a citizen, you can be sent back to wherever you are. I am just cautious to say that one of the things I tell people, I'm in America because of America. And I can say more, but I don't want to say more in this forum here right now. But because of America, I am in America. I came from a third world country where normal temperature is 68 to 70 degrees. It's a tropical. We don't have snow or winter. Not to say I don't like winter and snow, but it was a very tropical climate, and was kind of people are much laid back. We live in community. We have small villages, and we didn't need much to live. Kind of like the Indians living off of the land of God's creation. You know, you farm your own food stuff. You raise your own chickens and things like that. You catch your own fish and all those things. So, but anyway, I am kind of a little diverting. But the idea again here is not only in America, but this had been across the world for most part.
Mhm.
The concept of the anthropologist and also Mukesh's comments makes me think that not just in America and not just about people of different cultures, but also people of, I think there's the standard, the anthropological, professional, educated, white, middle-aged standard that knows everything about everybody else, including other white people who are younger than them, or other white people who are not straight, and other white people who are older than them even. There's like one acceptable category of experts on a people group.
Mhm.
I appreciated reading this. I found myself, it was sad. I want to clarify that, but at the same time, I found myself laughing at the sarcasm and just the how silly when you think about here are people that really thought they were on the mark and that they knew everything there was to know. And you're sitting back and going, oh my gosh, you were so far off base. But I appreciated the way it was written, and I found myself also several times just smiling, like, yeah, yeah, we just can't seem to get it, can we? And hand in hand with that, as I say, it was like, this is disgusting.
Mhm.
But I appreciated the writing.
Mhm. Yeah, I do like Bandoleria's wit in, right? I mean, how he's addressing for his own people and himself. Yeah, I think it might make it even more accessible in some ways.
Well, I put in that quote from page 82. Since 1955, there have been a number of workshops conducted in Indian country as a device for training young Indian leaders. So churches, Indian interest groups have each gone the workshop route as the most feasible means for introducing new ideas into younger Indians so as to create leaders. And it was unbelievably indicting in a community organizing context that I'm in right now, like right now. That this kind of mindset. So community organizing effort that I've been part of has been like really actually amazing at doing some really important learning about wrestling with the truth of colonization. And I mean, lots and lots and lots and lots of time and hours helping people who are involved in this understand and take in like the reality in order to prepare people to engage with Indigenous organizations that we might partner with. All awesome. Like, I do not denigrate any of that. And the layers of I don't know exactly what I want to say about the layers, but but anyway, the whole point is that in that community organizing effort, like we have an understanding of what a leader is, or what leadership looks like, or what the leadership skills are. And not kidding you, I mean, conversations about, well, don't you think the local native organizations would appreciate, us being able to like help build leadership skills among their young people? Like, not even kidding you. And I'm not saying that that's absolutely like, because I don't know, right? I don't know about the people here. I don't know what they want. But reading this chapter, I was just like, the layers of blindness are just they're so thick. There's so many of them. And just the assumptions, I guess, the layers of assumptions. This is what I understand to be leadership, right? And it's effective in all these other contexts. And so doesn't it make sense that this would be transferable, right? But then his whole piece about the like the disconnect that creates in younger Indigenous people, where leadership is like developed in a completely different way. Anyway, so I'm just like in real time, just like feeling this, like, wow, right here, right now. Messy, grateful that we're reading this, and also hard, to see like, okay, take a few steps back here and let that sink in. So I'm curious if anyone else has.
Well, I think that for me, that what I hear in that is our need to control our way of having power and demonstrating power of over and under versus beside. And that I think is another part of the whole DEIB work that we have to do. I think, I have my master's in leadership, but leadership, the way I was taught, hello, that doesn't work anymore. So, let's take a look at how do we realign walking with each other.
Well, and Tammy, I would also just add that the even the sort of like the more aware perspective was, well, hey, this is what we have kind of to offer, and and not like insisting, right, but saying, hey, is this something that you might be interested in, right? But having, like, I don't think I can say with 99% assurity that like not one of us had an understanding of this concept and this aspect of the history, right? So again, like, out of context, we might be, being very respectful, right? Like, hey, we're interested in partnership. We're not saying you need to do this, but this is kind of what we have to offer or whatever. But no idea of the context, right? No idea of the.
And it's the intention and impact, and not necessarily aware of the impact that our intention is
Right.
Revealing, or
Is that like Judas and the money for the nice perfume that Mary spent?
You mean this has been happening for a while?
It makes me think of the word progress, or
Hmm.
progress, as our northern neighbors say. That I think in Western culture, which I think is an interesting term because it comes from our East, from Europe anyway, that it's linear. So everything we're doing now is better. We understand better now. And progress isn't linear. I mean, the whole idea of linear makes very little sense in most contexts. So thinking we're progressing is like, okay, maybe we're better. Kind of your interest, aware of a lot of things on continuums. So yes, it's better to be this than to be this, but that doesn't mean this is where we stop. So I think the whole idea of we're marching forward, quote unquote, we're progressing, we're better than we used to be. I've done a lot of work on the continuum, working with male and female leaders in churches. And I have an easier time with people who are clearly don't think I should be a pastor because I'm a woman than people who pretend it's okay, but they really are not being respectful. So it's like, okay, I hear what you're saying. You're clear. That's helpful to me, rather than being mealy mouthed and pretending you're believing something you're not. Anyway.
So as I'm looking in on the screen here, again, I don't have here to tell me I'm an Indian. My color may help, but is it something that Europeans actually instill in them as they're growing up? Because as Leslie had mentioned, how so often we ask someone how are they doing, and they will say they are doing fine. In the meantime, we know they are not. Instead of being honest and say, I'm having a messy day or things are not well, we say without any hesitation, oh, I'm doing all right. I'm doing all right. And I'm wondering if it is because of the way we were brought up and said, you know what, we are not going to say how we truly feel.
Was that not true in your growing up?
Nope, because everybody, I don't know, it is because of the relationship or the community building where if you need help, you say you need help. Or if you're having a bad day, you just say, don't talk to me right now. I'm upset. Or keep me in your prayer because things are not well. And one of the things my dad had gone on now, but actually two things he had taught me and still stuck to me is never thief or steal and never tell a lie. So it's really, really high in my priority in my life. Never steal because you're gonna get caught somewhere or another. And then telling the truth, telling lies, you'll have to tell a lie to get out of a lie, to get out of a lie, to get out of a lie. So it is very continuous. So why not? And there's so much truth in that because I think somebody had said the truth, even though sometimes get you into trouble, will set you free. I don't know. You probably know of that guy who said that.
I think people often don't tell the truth because the person asking doesn't really want to know. They're just being polite. But that's a level of transparency and truth telling I think is common a lot in a lot of European American cultures, but it varies. I've lived in lots of different parts of the country, and my favorite part about growing up in New York is that they'll tell you how they feel, even if they swear in your face, but at least you know where you stand with them. And so that's my way of communicating. I don't swear at people usually, but I do tell them how I feel. So I struggle with the people not really wanting to know when they ask.
Someone mentioned sarcasm and humor in Deloria's work, and maybe that makes it easier to take. That I found when I'm reading, like, a 500-page history book about annihilation, that 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 when I'm reading Deloria or someone who can use some, I mean, I see sarcasm as a type of humor, but it's just it's a way of going, okay, I can catch my breath, I can smile for a minute, and then go back to the horrors that I'm reading. So I think that the ways we share information, like if I'm trying to share information about Indigenous peoples in this country with someone who, that's not that I know a lot, but someone who might know less than I do, the way I do that is so important. And the way of maybe doing that a little bit of, I collect Native American art, and that's one of the ways people come into my house and they hear about Indigenous peoples in this country because they ask questions about the art. So I think humor is another way of a way to draw people in that's not hitting them over the head. I mean, obviously, sometimes people need to be hit over the head, but just finding another way of inviting people to learn and to care. And I think his wit is just hilarious.
Curious, Sunny, you put the quote from page 92. Indians must be redefined in terms that white men will accept going on. I wonder if you want to say anything more about that.
I think part of it is just simply it's a statement about language and how we have our own language, and until somebody can put it in the words that we want, we struggle with it. I think we do that in a number of different places. When somebody's talking about something and it's not our language, we can't always accept it. But I just think, again, it was the idea that even with language, we expect you to fit in a box. And we're going to keep pushing, and then we'll come up with the words that define you. So that language barrier is real. Just as we were just talking about truth telling, and what does that really mean? To some people, that means I can say anything I want. For other people, it's let's step back, let's look at the big picture, and then find the truth in the midst of that thread. But it just caught my attention really there, because it's like, we're going to put you in a box and here's how we're going to define you.
Mhm.
And I think we think about that even within the language we use: Indigenous, tribe, nation, Indian, Native American. Was reading something just the other day, and it was back to can't I define how I want to be described? Can't I define who I am? Not you want to say this or that. And we certainly have had that challenges with lots of different situations. And as we come together with a variety of backgrounds and our across the board, it's like, I want to call you this. I was thinking also about just as you were talking about community organizing, and having worked with kids that were from Athabascan background and kids that were from Eskimo background when I worked in Alaska in camping programs, and needing to do almost what I might say translation. So that may be the way it happens back home, and that may be acceptable here. And I'm not going to tell you that's wrong, but also if you act out your anger by picking things up and throwing them across the room, if you're over here, that's not going to be acceptable. So being able to have those conversations that help us see how things fit together in different ways in different places without also have to naming something as wrong or bad. But you know, we all know that. You go to somebody's house for dinner and this is how it works. And you go to somebody else's house and it works like this. So I think particularly as we worked with a lot of kids that were from above the Arctic Circle and being out of the village of 50 people was a new experience. We did an awful lot of explaining and awareness building both ways. So they were teaching me and I was helping them to interpret in their own environment, and in a new environment. But how do we put that lens on as we're doing, as you were saying earlier, that community organizer? And we have a leadership program you can join, you know, and we have nice little games that make sense to us, that don't make sense to anybody else. So
Isn't that the white way? I like one thing you said, Sunny, connected to me to something that Mukesh was saying, that, I mean, my understanding of the 500 plus years of history here, right, is complete theft and complete lies. So not only are we not, you know, like telling the truth sometimes, or I mean, like it's at the other end of the spectrum. So like all of our systems are based in that, not in truth telling or in like,
Mhm.
hey, that's not yours.
Nor are we recognizing what it means to respect each other.
Mhm.
I think about my grandson who is incarcerated and is now working to connect with his tribe and to get an eagle and a hawk feather for his faith practices. He was baptized went to confirmation in the Lutheran Church, but he is discovering now who he is at the core of his being, which I'm just really grateful for. So. And how right we thought we were to make sure he got baptized and to make sure that he went to confirmation.
Amy, do you think there's a Lutheranism that can embrace his native spiritual practices?
I do think so. The penitentiary in which he's living has a congregation, multiple congregations, and various expressions of faith, and we have a Lutheran pastor who is the chaplain over all of that. So I feel really, really grateful that I have been able to connect with him to get a sense of what's available and what and he himself in his past life was incarcerated, so he also has a view of what it's like to be on the inside, and how it is to walk with people. So I feel like a huge gift. So
I'm not always clear with Deloria where, given his father was an Episcopal priest, and there's some differences, I think, at least the way I'm reading him, which may be incorrect, in the different times that he was writing, but kind of his own faith journey and how, I'm not going to say how you could put Episcopal with the native because those aren't opposite at all, but we think they are. So it's kind of like you're either this or you're this, or the idea that there could be integration in people's spiritual journeys that's different from someone else's is I don't think something that, I'm United Methodist, but I don't think many Christian denominations, at least uptight pastors, would accept that. So I don't know if any of you or what your sense is of his faith journey in terms of how he grew up and how he looked back on that. I mean, he went to seminary. It was just interesting that his different directions. I mean, he's more of a Renaissance man than anyone I can think of in this era in terms of just different education, different things he could do and being so skilled at so many things. But anyway, I'm just curious what how you might, having read some of his stuff, understand his faith connection or as being similar to or different than what yours is. I always can't tell in his writing, partly because of his sarcasm.
For the little bit I know, I wonder if it's intentional from his angle. That like, I don't know, I haven't read anything. Not that I've read all this stuff about him, but it doesn't feel clear to me, and I wonder if that's intentional, that he's not like identifying with one or with a particular way. It kind of feels like it's all over the place. Just my 2 cents.
I also wonder, it is because we think in this linear way of thinking that we are asking him this question about his learning, because we have our mole that we look into things, right? I don't know. I'm just wondering if that's one way of curiosity. I know Leslie had talked about if you have anything common versus not. Um, one of the, and I may have shared this already. I don't know if I shared this with this group, but at least some of you may have heard this before. Growing up in Guyana again, I have the blessing of living in among community that have Hindus, Muslim, and Christians, and we celebrate each other. We may not believe in the same belief system, but we celebrate with each other. That helps us to see each other as God's creation. And so it's easier for me to be more acceptable to other people and their differences because of that bringing up and growing up in that community. And one of the thing, again, as a former Hindu, I don't know what you guys know about Hinduism, but when I went to seminary, I didn't realize how much of the Old Testament is actually so much in common with Hinduism. High priest, holy ground, altar, incense, all of those things are so much commonality in Hinduism. And again, it helps me to be more welcoming. You know, when I became a Christian, I was asking the question, which part of the very beginning of the Bible we don't get as Christians, which is God created. And if God created every human being in this world, does not make us related one way or another? And then Jesus says, do unto others. I mean, if they are your family, would you treat them bad? You know, but again, that's one of the questions I beg to ask, because when we do have our differences, I will say, hey, wait a minute here, as Christians, don't we all connected some way? Anyway, I'm again going outside.
Well, believe it or not, we are almost to our closing time, or beginning to close. So if there's anything, any other burning thing that you wanted to bring to the group, or just name out loud. I actually just want to say that I'm very unsettled about this. The quote that you put in, Sunny, the second quote, it is very unsettling. I'm unsettled about this unsettling piece. For a teenage Indian to become an instant authority, equal in status with the PhD interrogating him. Wow, I just think that just speaks. There is a lot there about about development and maturation, and what are the assumptions about how that all happens in a natural and developmentally appropriate way. Yeah. I mean, the easy just like disconnect is like, kids having devices, and they're like they have authority, right? That they have control over something that is equal to the adults around them, and how destabilizing that is actually. So anyway, that piece, I'm like, I'm unsettled by that.
Well, and for me, when I read that, I mean, one of the instant things for me is how we put token youth on a church council and then wonder why they don't behave like we expected them to. Why don't they say anything? Why don't they do this? Why don't they know what all the kids think? So we do it in lots of different ways, but yeah, where we set people up to be, maybe failure is too strong of a word, but we certainly don't set them up for feeling like they're contributing in a way that they really are possible to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. What do we have to learn by that one sentence? Or unlearn? What do we have to learn and unlearn? Yeah. Any last minute, just burning pieces you want to share?
I had a question. I'm curious about and maybe just looking online is the best way, about the November conference on Deloria. I know there was one last year. Is that an annual?
It
Okay.
is. Mhm.
Okay. And
Yeah.
can I find out what I need to know by looking online?
Probably not this early. They usually don't post anything until like September, October. They're usually pretty last minute in their planning.
But the dates might be available now.
Might be.
Okay. I live in Oregon, so getting Chicago takes a little bit of planning, but
Gotcha.
thanks.
I know they do some pieces online, trying to make it more accessible to people around the nation. At least the larger parts, they're trying to make available to everyone, if that helps. How would a poem feel in this time? Something was shared to me in a meeting right before this, and it feels connected to some of the questions I feel like we're asking. It's called For When People Ask by Rosemary Watola Trommer. I want a word that means okay and not okay. More than that, a word that means devastated and stunned with joy. I want the word that says, I feel it all at once. The heart is not like a songbird, singing only one note at a time, more like a Tuvan throat singer, able to sing both a drone and simultaneously two or three harmonics high above it. A sound, the Tuvan say, that gives the impression of wind swirling among rocks. The heart understands swirl, how the churning of opposite feelings weaves through us like an insistent breeze, leaves us wordlessly deeper into ourselves, blesses us with paradox, so we might walk more openly into this world so rife with devastation, this world so ripe with joy.
Mm. Yeah. Well, in that spirit, I'd like to just invite us to go around, and if you have a word or words, and the words could be opposite words, yeah, how you experienced today, what you learned today, how you're leaving today. I think my word is humble.
Mm.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful that we have this space to learn. That's brave.
I feel thoughtful.
I'm still questioning.
I would lean into awareness.
Mm. I think I'll lift up the word that Stephanie noted in the chat from that poem, swirl. Feels like where I'm at as far as all the things that we read and everything that everyone brought up today. I think we're almost, yeah, there just to make sure we're honoring our time. I guess in a white way too, as far as we have an hour, and so we're going to stick to an hour. There is no such thing as other time. And I also know you have other commitments. So we do thank you for actively creating beloved community with us in this space with an objective of healing together, which is a swirl, right? It is messy, it is chaotic, it is painful, it is all the things. But we believe it takes each of us and all of us. So we're grateful you're here. There are a number of events this month supporting our learning with and from Indigenous peoples. So we encourage you to check out the event pages on the ELCA coaching website for those opportunities. But I'll just highlight by names. There are 2 modules this month on decolonization and organizing for systems change. That feels timely to me. But they are also offering that every other month throughout the year. So if you can't make the April ones, know that you can look forward and see the other options. There are also classes this month on sovereignty through the Indigenous lens, as well as Indigenous thought and theology. And there's also a vigil for murdered and missing Indigenous women towards the beginning of May. So we have quite a bit of opportunities this month specific to our studies here. Next week, you can join us back in this space for creating beloved community. Nobody journeys alone. And thank you, Solveig, for putting these links in the chat. And then next month, the second Wednesday for this book study is May 14th. Please join us back here for chapter 5.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So as you leave here today, remember that you are seen, that you are valued, that you are loved. Go in peace, friends. Or go agitated. That's good too.